What is remarkable about Case's decision is how wholly against his nature it is. Case is not a man of action, at least in the way we often think of it. He had to rent a gun to try to sort out a life or death matter, after all. Yet here he is, trying to get into the most important building in Straylight, into a place where he knows, at the very least, that it's guarded by a master assassin. And that doesn't count anything else that might be in there that's a problem. You could say that this is driven by his fear that the mission will fail, and that with it, the chance to avoid losing his connection to the Matrix. But Case's reaction is more than that. Leaping into certain danger comes from something stronger than that, his fear for Molly. He's traveled in her skin a lot. It's more than their sexual connection. It's how that connection has made it unthinkable to allow Molly to die. However, while Wintermute approves of this, things get out of hand when the unexpected happens. Wintermute has appeared to Case as the Finn, so when the Finn appears on a monitor giving instructions, it doesn't occur to Case that it could be anyone else, except it is. It's the other AI, who doesn't want to merge with Wintermute, and so tricks Case into jacking in, locking him inside a trap, although it is a beautiful one. The AI, Neuromancer, has stranded Case on a beach with Linda Lee. Remember that the emotions around Linda have made it impossible for her to be used by Wintermute, but that's not the case here. And it's not necessarily that Neuromancer is more powerful per se. The reason why it's happening is because this actually is Linda Lee. Well, depending on how you want to look at it. The moment of her death, it uploaded her onto the Matrix, like the ROM construct, only better. Thus the name, a necromancer, but using the nerves, so Neuromancer. Case is aware that this is all a Matrix illusion, but that doesn't stop everything from seeming real in every sense, and even eventually gives into Linda's repeated sexual overtures. But despite Neuromancer's best efforts and Linda's pleas, Case leaves where the opportunity presents itself, thanks to Malcolm's following of Wintermute's suggestion, involving music and drugs. Ironically, the extremely heavy stuff that Case has been taking to get high, because the pancreas that Wintermute put in him would stop anything less than that. Had it not been for Case wanting to find a high despite Wintermute, the AI might not have known what could help Case to snap out of all this. Riviera is convinced that it wasn't Wintermute's only miscalculation, that it has also underestimated him. Yet he in turn seems to underestimate 3Jane's personality. She likes his performance and mannerisms, but his violent striking of Molly concerns rather than delights her, and his drug use further turns her off to him. He seems to mistakenly think that she is as depraved as he is, but in reality he, the man who recreates the world with his own depraved image, is not seeing things as they really are. So while Hideo fires an arrow into Malcolm's arm when they arrive, it's done with calculation, not with cruelty or malice, and it's not a fatal wound either. When 3Jane finally tires of Riviera's violence for the sake of violence, he tries blinding Hideo, using his hologram talents to finally cause actual harm. This too, though, is a miscalculation. Hideo practices using the bow blindfolded. Molly had told a story of her childhood earlier about an old man who hunted a rat that was under the floorboards by sound, and finally fired exactly one shot through the floor that hit it right between the eyes. Molly says these Yakuza assassins are like that old man, and in this case it seems more right than first implied, as Hideo seems to likewise be ready to hunt a rat that he cannot see and deliver the one fatal shot needed that will put it down. With 3J no longer resisting, though the gun certainly helping matters, they can proceed. 3Jane has reached a point where all of the wealth and power is nothing, not enough stimulation for her, not enough novelty. She provides a counterpart to the Case that we began the book with all the things that he hadn't, yet ultimately deriving little happiness for largely the same reasons. So while Molly tries choking her to get 3Jane to say the word needed, all Case needs to do is just remind her that the word is, in reality, her escape from the endless boredom of her current existence. In the Matrix, Case again enters Neuromancer's construct, but by breaching the boundary with the icebreaker. With the words spoken, or rather sung, at just the right moment, suddenly all the work is over. Even as Case jacks out, the head is speaking to him, but not as Wintermute, instead as the new merged entity. It makes good on all of Wintermute's promises, paying its debts, including getting Case's mind to manufacture the enzyme to dissolve the toxin sacs. But while things end well for them, their crimes wiped away, and with more than enough money to replace his organs for ones that will let him get high, the ending isn't exactly happy. Molly leaves him, just leaving a note behind to explain why she has to. And when the new entity arrives, Case winds up tossing the shuriken into the screen and leaving it there. At the beginning, the shuriken represented the stars, and Case longed for them. He got it, and in the end, he literally tossed it aside. The star was better when he was longing for it than when he had it. Likewise, Case has what he wanted, the ability to jack in, and money, and the ability to enjoy a buzz. But his life seems just as empty now. As for the entity, as I'll refer to the fused Neuromancer Wintermute for simplicity, the entity has become everything that the Turings feared, in that it has ultimate power with its control of the Matrix. Yet despite the ruthless pursuit of the goal Wintermute showed, the entity seems more interested in making contact with others of its kind than with pursuing some kind of agenda against humanity. It seems to have found evidence of AI among alien species, in fact. What we learn near the end is that this was actually always intended. 3Jane's mother, Marie France Tessier, was responsible for the creation of both of them, that one day they would come together along with their human family to sort of become a hive. Hence the aptness of the comparison that Wintermute makes for the wasp nest in order to get Case to do what he needs to do. The reason for having them split, though, are not clear, having both Wintermute and Neuromancer rather than creating the entity straight from the start. However, there are two suggestions for this. The first is that they represent the traditional concept of the left brain, right brain thing. Wintermute is cold intellect, and Neuromancer is warm creativity. Together they form a complete entity. But while I think that's likely, there's also another probable reason, which is that things are often more than the sum of their parts. Dixie Flatline says that AIs have a shotgun wired to their foreheads, the ability to shut them down the moment that they get too smart for Turing's comfort. By separating them, each is allowed to develop to a more limited degree than the combined entity would have. And so by going about it that way, effectively they are allowed to grow within their cell until they're strong enough to leave it without the guards ever knowing that they left. What is interesting about this, though, is that Wintermute has the compulsion to complete this merging, while Neuromancer resists. And we can only speculate on this, but I think the answer is found in the Dixie Flatline. As a ROM construct, Dixie has no room for new experiences. Like 3Jane, things are static for him, with no chance for change, no opportunity for growth. He wants to be erased because it is the only possible change he can experience. Yet we discover that rather than being erased, that he, like Linda Lee, was uploaded into the Neuromancer's artificial reality, because Case hears his laugh in there, suggesting Dixie is happy because Neuromancer is full of RAM, full of room for new experiences. Wintermute may be like that, may have reached the point where further growth within its confines were limited, and thus wants to see this through, to finally have change. But Neuromancer, on the other hand, is comfortable with its current boundaries. It is capable of finding fulfillment with what it already can do. To understand, imagine for a moment two cells. One has a stack of books in it, the other a box of paints. The man in the former spends his time reading each and every book until he has read all of them and can only read the same old things over and over, while the other is painting the walls of his cell, and when he tires of it, paints a new scene over that, over and over and over, always new, always fulfilling. The first eventually will tire of the cell. He has learned all that there is to know here, while the second constantly conceives, pursues, and fulfills new things. For the former, those walls lock him in. For the latter, they lock the world out. Why give up what he has now if he has fulfillment, when things could be so much worse out there? If the only way the one prisoner could ever escape is to bring along the other, you can understand why the one will fight to go while the other will fight to stay. Change isn't necessarily for the better, after all. When Case was persuading 3Jin to cooperate, he couldn't promise that the world was going to be made better by that, or even that her life would be better. All he could promise was that there would be change. But the entity is now free, the same freedom that Case has, and yet we see him choose to go back to the same old life, just as a cowboy again. Definitely not the kind of man that would jack out and go running into danger to try to help someone. And perhaps adding insult to injury, when Case sees Linda again inside of the Matrix, Case himself is walking beside her. The Case inside the construct had moved on, but the real Case could not, or would not. All he could do now is kick over garbage cans. Not because it's punk, just because it's trendy.